Friend of the program, Joel Klatt, is back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Joel?
Good. What's going on, bud? How are you doing?
Oh boy, I've been very, my kids. I've got a 13, a 10, and an 8. Okay, and they have used a word I'd never heard of before.
Uh-oh.
It's a combination of nervous and excited. I'm nervous-sided for Saturday's game. I'm a nervous-sided man for kickoff.
Oh man,
on Saturday.
That seems like every test I ever took in my school days. Nervous-sided. Man, I could not be more excited for this one. This is, there are some rivalries out there that are great, obviously, but there are ones also that probably fly a little bit under the radar from a national perspective. But because of the blurred lines of the fan bases have more vitriol to them, this is one of those. And, I mean, there is no love lost between the players, the fan bases, and this one should be excellent. I can't remember, obviously, a time that this rivalry meant so much to both programs and meant so much to college football in general. I mean, the last time they were both in the top 10 to face each other was 1964. So this should be an absolute bloodbath, and I am here for it.
And they've never been 7-0, each of them coming into this game as well. So let's talk about Michigan State a little bit. They beat Miami earlier this year. And so, you take a look at the rest: Northwestern, Youngstown State, Nebraska, Western Kentucky, Rutgers, Indiana. So they haven't seen a team as composed and stout as Michigan. How do you see Michigan State matching up in this game?
Well,
Joel?
I think that Michigan State has done such a good job of forming an identity and playing to that identity in a short time under their head coach, Mel Tucker. This is only his second year, and granted, they've done a lot of things in the transfer portal, so they've got a lot of new players, 40 new players on their team this year that weren't there a year ago, and they're getting a huge contribution from a lot of those guys. Kenneth Walker is one of those guys. He's the transfer that came in and has really transformed their running game. Comes in from Wake, and he's been terrific, leading rusher in the country. But I think more than anything else, it's their toughness and their mentality. Mel Tucker was at Colorado. I got to know him pretty well when he was there, and he's unapologetically tough. Everything in practice is about competition and toughness. Everything in the weight room is about competition and toughness. He is very disciplined about the style of player that he wants, the mentality of the player, and also the frame of the player. If you look around at this roster, he has built this in the mold of more of an SEC roster. They're much faster on defense, Rich, than they have been in the past, and they're much longer on the outside. You look, they've got two corners, both transfer portal guys that came in, one from Florida, one from Alabama, Ronald Williams and Chester Kimbrough. They're both over 6 foot tall. Ronald Williams is 6'2". So he's doing things because of his history in the SEC, trying to bring an SEC style of defense to the Big Ten, where they get after the quarterback, they're long on the outside, and they get great linebacker play. They've got one of the best pass rushers in college football, Jacob Panashuk, who is just behind Aiden Hutchinson. So this is a team that will run it well. They're explosive on offense with a couple of good wide receivers, and they're fast on defense and long on defense. And I think Michigan is in for a very tough road because this team is going to be ready for them. And Michigan has shown an inability to be explosive in the passing game.
Yep.
And the Spartans are going to be loading up on that run game for the Wolverines.
Well, in terms of that, with the passing game explosive for Michigan, you've seen J.J. McCarthy, the second-string quarterback on the depth chart behind Cade McNamara, who looks, he plays football like Harbaugh did for Michigan, to be honest with you. Moxie and intelligence and toughness and taking care of the ball and being a perfect extension for Harbaugh in the same way that Jim was for Bo back in the day. And he's made one mistake that Michigan was able to overcome, which was an interception in the second half against Nebraska. But McCarthy has a big play ability, and you see Jim kind of dabble with him a little bit. Do you think, have you had conversations about Harbaugh, about why and what, And maybe it's for games like this now that they're taking on the states, Michigan, Penn, and Ohio for this moment.
I have, as well as Josh Gaddis, the offensive coordinator. And I think it's fascinating because in this day and age, I think it's easy for coaches to scare themselves into a situation where they have to play one or the other. And also they scare themselves into or get pressured into via their fan base to play the more talented player all the time and the one with more recruiting stars. McCarthy, if no one knows out there, is a 5-star recruit. He's a true freshman. Cade McNamara, he's a more veteran guy, and he's a little bit more steady. Let me put it to you this way, and this is my words, not theirs, but I'm going to paraphrase kind of what they say. They would not be 7-0 without Cade McNamara being their starting quarterback.
Fact.
There's a good chance that they can't get to 12-0 or 11-1 without J.J. McCarthy playing more significant role or even being their starting quarterback moving forward. Okay, so if you start to think about this, and I think that they had a long view to begin the season, where they know, like, listen, in order to give ourselves the best chance to win, Cade's got to play. He's not going to turn the ball over. We know we're very good up front on our offensive line. We've got these 2 great backs, and we're just going to be able to bludgeon people to death, really, and win games. Now, if we can get through Wisconsin on the road or Nebraska on the road, and we can win those games, we're going to set ourselves up for a chance to make a run here late in the season, late October and November. Now, having said that, rather than just put all their chips in that basket, they understand that Cade McNamara probably has a lid or a ceiling to where he can take the offense. I wouldn't categorize him as an above the X's and O's player. Here's how I would put it. They don't have a wide receiver that takes Cade's game to the next level, and Cade doesn't take any of their wide receivers' game to the next level. JJ does, potentially, but he's the unbroken colt that, you get on and you're like, you just don't know. So you don't want him to buck you off against Wisconsin or Washington early in the season and lose you a game with a poor interception or a mistake. But at the same time, that ceiling that Cade has on this offense may need to be ratcheted up, and that lid may need to come off of that offense at some point down the stretch. Maybe it's this week. So they played him, and it wasn't just small packages. They gave him the offense and would allow him to play in big moments and shuttle him in at times. So now, if and when they need to go to J.J. McCarthy, he's not an unknown commodity. They're not, quote, replacing the quarterback. They're just giving him an expanded role within the offense. I think it's been very smart from them. They understand what they're going to need here in the back half of the season, and I think they're more prepared to answer some of those questions if and when they arise than maybe they have been in the past.
What a backdrop, right, for 6 versus 8, a big-time rivalry in college football for the Big Ten, top 10 matchup where Michigan State – with Mel Tucker, rumored maybe to be a coach in the eye of other teams that might want to hire him, and then obviously Harbaugh, this stage of his career as the coach, and a kid that might come in at quarterback and put some spice in it. I mean, you and Gus have got quite the piece of filet mignon served up at noon.
There's no doubt, in particular when you know that this matchup, the Ohio State matchup, these types of matchups,
right.
Anybody else in college football can point to a 7-0 record, and everyone would be like, man, our coach is getting it done this year.
Yes.
We're so excited. Not in Michigan. No. Everyone's just sitting back, and you're like, okay, let's see it on October 30th. Let's see it on November 27th. That fan base, you included, I think would fall into that.
Yeah, I'm actually thrilled with this. It's been a while, man. And I like it. I like seeing the fun that they're having, and Pat Forty with a great story about a fun house that Harbaugh is building, right? The football fun house or something.
Yep.
I kind of dig it, and of course, Michigan State just wants to wipe the floor with them. Personally, just to put a button on this, and we'll talk about some other college football stories. I think Michigan has been preparing for this game all year, that they're built to win a game like this. It's just what happens, on Thanksgiving weekend. I don't know if they've got that firepower. If it's going to be a 40 to 30, a 50 to 40 game or something like that, I don't know. That's why McCarthy's such a fascinating figure to me.
Exactly. And this is why I can't wait to see Like when is it when he gets 50% of the snaps or 60% of the snaps, right? What drive do they need it the most when they need his legs to affect the defense and his ability to throw it down the field? It's so fascinating, and I love it. This is why I love college football. And you're right that the mentality of this team is far different than the teams previous that I've covered at Michigan. There is an element of love of the game that's maybe a little higher. And love of each other, to be honest with you. I know that's hard to measure and talk about, but this is a team that really loves football. I think led by Hassan Haskins and Aiden Hutchinson. Those two guys set the tone. Hutchinson being one of the best players in college football, a guy that no doubt, you and I will be talking about come springtime when it comes to the NFL draft as one of the top draft picks next year. So it's a fascinating game. And by the way, Michigan State, if they win this, that sets the world on fire.
Sure does.
Right? Like LSU is going to be banging down their door if they win this game for their head coach, and they're going to be saying, "Please don't leave us." They already gave him $5.5 million to be there, which, for a guy that hadn't won as a head coach is a lot of money. They're paying his assistants a lot of money. I think the pool for their assistants plus the head coach is somewhere over $11 million. So, Spartan land, this is a big one there, too.
Certainly sets up the weekend before Thanksgiving at Ohio State for Michigan State, and then the weekend of Thanksgiving versus Penn State. That could be for all the shooting match for who I guess would take on Iowa. One would think in the other conference.
That other side of the division is so fascinating. With Purdue beating Iowa,
right?
Wisconsin still technically controls their own destiny, kind of. So, I mean, there's also Purdue's still alive. Iowa is alive. Like, it's all over the map.
Joel Klatt, a few more minutes left with Joel Klatt, who's calling Michigan State on Saturday at noon with Gus Johnson and the rest of the Fox crew joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Here's a storyline. Let's front load it for December. Can a guy who comes in the middle of a season be considered a Heisman Trophy candidate? And Caleb Williams in Oklahoma. What do you think of that?
I think that you could consider him a candidate, and that's as far as I'll go. I believe in honoring the totality of the season. I don't believe that he should win the Heisman Trophy because he has not played the requisite games. And I know that there's not, some number, but part of being the best player in college football is being the best player in college football for your team for the entire season. And we haven't – it's totally unprecedented for a guy to miss even a couple of games and win the Heisman Trophy. So while it's a great story and I love what he's doing for that team, he's still, to me, somewhat of – they almost lost to Kansas, and I know it wasn't because he played poorly, but at some point, that has to weigh into your equation, in particular when you've got guys that I think have put together a better full body of work. To be quite honest with you, I think Bryce Young's body of work is better than Caleb Williams. I think that Matt Corral's body of work, Kenny Pickett's body of work, C.J. Stroud's body of work, Kenneth Walker at Michigan State. I mean, there's guys all over the place that have a better full body of work than what Caleb does, and I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment to see what this kid is doing. While it's amazing, I don't believe that he should win the Heisman Trophy.
Well, I've never seen a player, Joel, spark a replay review because he has stolen the ball away from his own ball carrier to make sure there's a first down on fourth down. I've never seen that before, but I did see it against Kansas. And yeah, they almost lost to Kansas. But there's always that clunker, right? When you go on the road in conference against somebody that can hang their entire season on a one win that day against you, and they didn't suffer that loss because of this kid. Yeah,
and that play I think was
never seen.
It was one of the more impressive plays I've ever seen in my entire life. Right. And I love watching him, and I don't want to diminish him as a player. That doesn't mean that I don't think he's not great, because he is, and he has sparked this team to. I think a much better version of themselves. You look in particular at their run game. They've averaged 220 yards or more a game in those 3 games since he's taken over. That was vastly different than what they were under Spencer Rattler, in large part due to the fact that he's contributing not only with those like 75 rush yards per game, but he's threatening the defense. His ability to make throws down the field on time and more in rhythm than what Rattler was doing is tremendous. Having said that, even with that moment, ripping the ball away from Kennedy Brooks in order to save a victory, I just don't think he's played enough games.
Yeah, I hear you and I agree with you. I've just never seen somebody create a play where the officials say, "Let's stop. We got to take a look at that."
Yeah, like what's going on? Is that legal? I don't know.
That was
when
amazing.
I first saw it, I was like, "Wait, is that legal?"
Amazing.
I don't know if that's legal or not.
I know, it's amazing. Last one for you here. The Carson Palmer mention of Mike Tomlin's name for USC's open candidacy on our buddy Dan Patrick's show. Look, when I was in high school, Christy Brinkley was on my wish list too. So, just breaking news. What'd you make of that? And where do you think the USC coaching search is if they're really spending time on Mike Tomlin, which I think is a non-starter, clearly?
Well, so I think that swinging big is fine. And I think that USC does have cachet. And I don't think that they have to limit themselves. Now, having said that, I loved what Mike said.
Yes.
I love what I mean. That's how you turn a job down. And I think it's also, by the way,
I love that.
It might be sneaky brilliant to challenge billionaires about the size of their blank check. That was the best part for me. I was like, he was like, "There's not a big enough blank check," and I'm like, "Really? Like, are we?"
Have you met Dr. Dre? Right.
Now, having said that, the only part that I thought was interesting that he bristled at, and I understand it was heat of the moment, but when he's talking about Andy Reid and he's talking about Sean Payton,
right.
Well, with all due respect to Mike Tomlin, those guys weren't mentioned by Carson Palmer,
right.
who's part of the search committee for the open position. So this had nothing to do with a disrespectful question to him personally. In fact, the journalist who asked the question was just doing their job. So I have a little bit of a problem of getting on a soapbox and making it seem like the question is absolutely ridiculous. It's not a ridiculous question because of what was reported by Carson Palmer. If you want to get mad at Carson Palmer, that's fine. John Harbaugh doesn't get mad when he gets mentioned for college jobs, which happens more regularly than when it happens for Mike Tomlin. This has been the first time. And he's got what I would consider to be a very similar style resume and style job in the National Football League. A very good organization that's having a lot of success, a deep tenure, a good GM over a course of a couple of different GMs, just like Mike Tomlin. And he gets asked about it as well and doesn't have a blow-up moment. So while I want to praise, like, that's how you turn a job down, it also shouldn't have gotten personal, as if, like, how dare they ask me about it? It's like, listen, your name was brought up. You're going to get the question.
I think part of it might be that Palmer's a Bengal, or originally was. At least I know that's what Steeler fans think.
All over the place, right?
Yeah, I know.
To himself, like, how do I help my old organization? Here's how I do. The easiest way to be defeated is be distracted. So he just threw a distraction grenade right in there to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That sneaky brilliance by Palmer.
Well, Joel.
But man, I wish at some point, let's all hope that we're in a position to challenge a billionaire about the size of their blank check. Oh.
Joel Klatt, thanks for the call. And once again, you will have my emotions, you and Gus, in the palms of your hands and your headsets. And I will be glued. I will be glued and hopefully joyous by the end of the day. But I know the call will be great. You guys are awesome. Thanks for the call.
I appreciate that, Rich. Have a good one, man.
Right,
Can't wait to hook up later in the year.
Okay, you got it. That's Joel Klatt right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Love that guy, man. Love that guy. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.